My name is Louie McGee. I recently graduated from high school. I'm a nonprofit founder, an Ironman. I'm 19 years old, and I'm blind. I have a rare retinal eye disease called Stargardt that steals my central vision. I have little useful eyesight and rely on my peripheral vision and other senses. I was diagnosed at age 5, and it has progressed over the years. But I decided blindness would not be a limiting factor in my life. I've always just figured it out, knowing that whatever I wanted to do in my life, I would see it as a possibility and an adventure. As you listen, I want you to think about the things you perceive as limiters in your life. I hope you will rethink and focus on what's possible. Growing up, my family and friends guided and helped me try all kinds of things. For example, I go to a lot of museums. Both my mom and dad have degrees in art history, and my grandparents were focused on art, history, and literature in their lives. In addition, right after I was diagnosed, my mom and dad took me to Hawaii so I could experience natural beauty. The sun rising over Haleakala and the migration of humpback whales. That's how they roll, and I learned I could still do most things, even if I saw them differently. In school, I played soccer by listening to the ball rolling through the grass and staying in touch with my teammates. I was in a golf league. Yep, I golf. In middle school, and was able to rely on others in my foursome to help me judge distance and track my ball. Throughout grade school and high school, I was on the swim team, where I learned the values of a strong team and community. I'm also an avid downhill skier. With my sister Carmela as my guide, we are quite the duo on the slopes. Carmela giving me instructions and I executing them quickly. A couple of years ago, we were skiing with our blind skier and guide vests on out in Utah. In line for the chairlift, someone came up thinking Carmela was a guide working for the resort. They asked her how to get back to the chalet, and she replied in her fiery way, "I don't know, I'm his guide, not yours." She has been my guide all of my life, and it did not surprise me at all that someone found her confident enough to ask for directions, even though she was just 12 years old at the time. In all these activities, I get the, "Wow, he's blind?" from parents and other kids. People also question me like I'm faking it. This is equally cool and frustrating. On one hand, people see me breaking stereotypes, and on the other, people should not be amazed simply because they see me doing something they believe someone with blindness cannot do. They haven't lived with blindness. They don't know the extent of my vision loss, and they don't know if the goal I just scored was a fluke. I had always been encouraged by people around me to be the best I could be, and it seldom occurred to my young brain that something might be beyond my reach. In my experience, most people have the misconception that those of us living with blindness fit into one of two stereotypes: helpless or hero. Helpless. As I stood at a street corner with my white cane a few months ago, a well-intentioned person came up and decided it would be helpful to grab my cane and pull me across the street. I thought, I arrived here without you. And I was waiting for the signal, just like you. But instead, I politely said, "Thanks, I've got this." Hero sounds great, but it comes back to the, wow, he's blind? It is not a feat of heroism when I walk up to Walgreens alone or perform in the school musical. For those of us living with blindness, this is us living our lives. We try, we succeed, we fail, just like everybody else. In between helpless and hero, there's a lot of room for possibility and adventure. 3 years ago, I started a nonprofit, Louie's Vision, to focus on just that. I wanted to help kids with blindness get the most out of life and help everyone better understand what living with blindness means. We focus on awareness, confidence, and accessibility. Speaking at schools and beyond spreads awareness about blindness. Hosting events for kids living with blindness builds confidence. Direct mentoring with kids and families, along with posting blogs of real-world stories of accessibility and hope, fosters community. Through connections in the blind community, last summer I was lucky to participate in a leadership and adventure trip to the Grand Canyon. There were kids living with blindness and fully sighted kids, all high school age. We hiked, climbed, and rafted in places I had to tell my parents afterwards because they would have had heart attacks. Exploring 270 miles of the canyon. This, more than anything, showed me what is possible. We all worked together. In fact, I often found myself hiking along with 2 or 3 other kids with blindness, and together we put more visual puzzle pieces in place than we could have on our own. 2 summers ago, I participated in a sprint triathlon with a friend Todd as my guide. Todd had Ironman fever after just completing his first in Madison, Wisconsin, and I soaked up the stories. While my first triathlon was an amazing experience, I was shocked that there were only 2 other athletes in the para division, and neither of which were blind. So 2 days later, I asked my parents if I could do the Ironman. I got a firm no. They quickly reminded me that I had never run more than 6 miles or biked more than 25. So not only was I going to have to test my physical perseverance and drive, but I had to sell my parents on the idea. I told them I wanted to do something big to inspire other kids, and they were all in. First, I needed to find a guide, someone who was not only willing to be my eyes through the 140-mile adventure, but also willing to train alongside me. I found a 10-time Ironman and saint, Milan Tomaska. On our first run together, Milan noticed a woman pulling her car into our path. He signaled to get her attention, but I got hit. Occupational hazard of being a blind runner. Wasn't the first time. When we arrived at home and told my parents, Milan was so shaken that they quickly became more concerned with him than my leg. I learned that Milan had my back and I could trust him to the hilt. This trust was again proven when, on another training run, he shouted, "Keep right, there's a pineapple on the trail." I was sure he was joking because we were in suburban St. Paul, and typically there are not pineapples lying around. Sure enough, a few steps later, I tripped over a pineapple. We laughed it off, but Milan never let me slack off or change the route because of my lack of vision. He continued to push me, running 21 miles one day after school during homecoming week, and biking 100 miles early Saturday morning before the dance. We traveled to Louisville for the race in early October. Race day came super quickly, and before we knew it, our story was being picked up by news stations from all over the world. Between interviews, Milan and I found time for a practice swim in the Ohio River. That is a disgusting river. In fact, the pollution in the river gave me a raging fever that lasted all night, the night before the race. I got practically no sleep, the weather was bad, and now the pressure of the public part of my race story hit me all at once. I knew my vision was not going to be a limiting factor, but now I was worried about my health and everyone watching me. We jumped in the water for the swim, and all my concerns rushed away with the current. I was back in my element. We got out of the water feeling even better and hopped on the bike for the next 112 miles. We just about froze. It was 45 degrees, windy, and pouring rain. The Cheetos and jelly beans I taped to the bike ahead of time sustained me through the numbing cold. As we completed the bike portion of the race, we took some time in the transition area to warm up. Then we set out for the 26.2-mile run. I didn't think I'd be looking forward to running a marathon, but at that point, I never wanted to sit on a bike ever again. During the run, I ignored all triathlete standards and went for the high school diet of 16 chocolate chip cookies. As we approached the finish line, I could hear everyone cheering us on. We sprinted through the final chute, and I heard them announce, "Louie McGee, you are an Ironman." At the finish, the first place athlete gave me his bouquet of winter's flowers and told me that I was an inspiration to him. Although fog was clouding my brain, at that moment I realized that my completing the Ironman had an impact on others. Even a professional athlete at the pinnacle of physical ability. The Ironman has allowed me to share my message of possibility and adventure with a broader group of people. I have had the opportunity to speak to more than 20 schools about growing up with blindness, possibility, and adventure. Telling my story has been equal parts giving and receiving. This winter, I spoke to a group of fifth graders. A week after, the teacher sent me an email telling me that a student who was hearing impaired told his teacher he was going to work past his hearing loss and pursue his dream of becoming a pilot. Another student with dyslexia told her teacher she went straight to the library after my visit and checked out a great big book. Because if he could do the Ironman, she could definitely read that challenging book. Being a part of helping another kid find their own adventure and reach beyond what they thought might have been a barrier inspires me to keep pushing past my own. Also, I've had just about every question imaginable. Anything from, will you go completely blind someday, to possibly the most frequent, do you play Fortnite? I just told you I can't see. But one kid this spring spoke up and said that I make living with blindness seem easy. It is not easy. We are all dealt challenges in life. And while blindness can be a limiter, it has given me the chance to change my perspective, learn things in a new way, and create something that is uniquely me. A lot of people ask, what's next after the Ironman? I've got a 4-year adventure plan called college. I plan to study psychology and go on to law school. As for satisfying my love for adventure, I had such a powerful experience in the Grand Canyon and fell in love with the Colorado River that I plan to go back and kayak all 270 miles of whitewater at some point in the next 10 years. But this is not all about adventure. I want you to rethink blindness. Pew Research says that blindness is the third most feared physical condition after only cancer and AIDS. You've heard my story. When you see someone living with blindness, these things might flash in front of your eyes. White cane, black sunglasses, braille, legal blindness. Is there illegal blindness? Let me check with my lawyer. The truth is, we all have something that we're dealing with. Join me in finding the possibility when facing new challenges. Like I always tell my parents, I'll figure it out. And so will you. Thank you.